There is a thought you have had that you have never told anyone. Maybe it flickered through your mind in a quiet moment. Maybe it showed up right in the middle of something ordinary. And the second it arrived, something inside you went cold because the thought felt wrong. It felt like proof of something, and so you pushed it away as fast as you could, hoping it would just disappear. It did not disappear. And now, somewhere underneath all the normal things you do in a day, that thought is still there, sitting quietly, waiting. And every time it comes back, the story you tell yourself gets a little louder. Something is wrong with me. Good people do not think this. I should not be this way. I want to spend some time with you today on something that does not get talked about enough. Because what I just described is not rare. It is not a sign of disorder, and it is not evidence of your character. It is one of the most universal features of having a human mind, and the suffering that comes from it is almost never about the thought itself. It is about what we decide the thought means. This channel is dedicated to helping people understand what is actually happening inside them, not to fix you, not to optimize you, but to help you see yourself more clearly, because clarity tends to reduce suffering faster than almost anything else. Today we are going to look at intrusive thoughts, the taboo ones, the ones that seem to come from nowhere, the ones that embarrass you or scare you. We are going to look at why the mind produces them, what happens when you try to suppress them, and what actually changes when you stop treating every difficult thought as a confession. This is not going to be a list of tips. This is more like sitting down and finally understanding a part of yourself that you have been running from. Let us start there. Most people do not realize that the human mind generates somewhere between 6,000 and 70,000 thoughts per day. Not all of those thoughts are chosen. Not all of them are welcomed. And a significant portion of them, in every person you have ever met, are strange, violent, sexual, shameful, dark, catastrophic. A person who loves their child has a sudden image of something terrible happening to them. A gentle, quiet person stands on a bridge and feels a sudden urge to jump, not because they want to die, but seemingly for no reason at all. Someone sits in a meeting and cannot stop imagining saying the most inappropriate thing possible. Someone praying has a thought about God that horrifies them. This is called thought intrusion. And research in clinical psychology has found that the content of intrusive thoughts in people with no diagnosable condition is remarkably similar to the content of intrusive thoughts in people with OCD. The difference is not the thought. The difference is what happens next. For most people, the thought drifts through and they let it go. They do not enjoy it, but they do not assign it much weight. For others, the thought hooks into something. A belief that thoughts reveal character. A fear that having the thought means they might act on it. A deep need to understand why the mind would go there. And from that moment forward, the thought stops being something that happened and becomes something that must be solved. Your nervous system is actually doing this for a reason. When something feels threatening, the threat detection system in your brain marks it for attention. Rumination is, in its original design, a feature. Your brain is trying to protect you by keeping the threat in view. It does not know that the threat is the thought itself. It does not know that keeping the thought in view is what makes it larger. There is a famous psychological experiment you may have heard of. In the late 1980s, a researcher named Daniel Wegner asked participants to do one simple thing: do not think about a white bear. Whenever a white bear came to mind, they were to ring a bell. The bell rang constantly. He called this the ironic process theory, and what it revealed was this: the act of trying to suppress a thought uses mental resources to monitor whether you are successfully not thinking it, which means part of your mind is now actively scanning for the very thing you are trying to avoid. Suppression does not reduce intrusive thoughts, it increases them. This is why pushing the thought away feels like pressing down on a spring. The harder you push, the more force is building up underneath. And when your grip loosens, even slightly, the thought does not just return, it returns with momentum. This changes how you see the problem. The thought itself is rarely what is causing the most suffering. What causes the suffering is the relationship you have built with the thought, the rituals of avoidance, the mental checking, the reassurance seeking, the hours spent trying to figure out whether the thought makes you dangerous. All of that effort is what keeps the loop running. And underneath all of that effort is almost always one core belief. If I think this, it must mean something about me. Let us look at that belief directly. There is a concept in cognitive behavioral therapy called cognitive fusion. It refers to the experience of becoming completely identified with a thought. When you are fused with a thought, the thought and reality feel like the same thing. Having the thought feels as real and as morally significant as doing the thing. But thoughts are not actions. They are not intentions. They are not even necessarily beliefs. The mind generates thoughts the way the ocean generates waves. Some of those waves are gentle, some of them crash, and none of them define the ocean. Here is something that tends to stop people when they hear it for the first time. Research shows that intrusive thoughts are often most disturbing when they are in direct contrast to a person's values. The parent who has a frightening thought about their child is almost always someone who loves that child deeply. The religious person whose prayer is interrupted by a blasphemous thought is someone for whom faith matters enormously. The careful, conscientious person who has an intrusive thought about violence is typically someone for whom causing harm would be devastating. The mind does not send distressing thoughts as a warning about who you are. In many cases, it sends them as a reflection of what you care about. The thoughts that disturb us most are often the ones furthest from our actual desires. This does not make the thoughts comfortable, but it does change what they mean. Now, I want to talk about what suppression costs you, not just in terms of the thoughts coming back, but in a wider sense. When we decide that certain thoughts are unacceptable to have, we create an internal exile, a part of our inner experience that we are not allowed to acknowledge, and that exile requires maintenance. It takes energy to keep something out of view. It takes vigilance. It creates a low-level tension that does not go away because you can never quite be sure the thought is gone. You are always half watching. Over time, this maintenance cost is significant. People who live with high levels of thought suppression often report feeling fatigued in a way they cannot explain, anxious without an obvious source. Like they are constantly bracing for something, because they are bracing for the thought to return. This is also where shame compounds the problem. Shame is not guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am something bad. And when a thought becomes evidence of a shameful identity, something shifts. You stop being a person who had a difficult thought, you become a person who is defined by that thought. And that shift makes honest self-examination almost impossible. Because looking clearly at the thought means looking clearly at what you are afraid you are. The paradox is that this protection mechanism, shame plus suppression, guarantees the thing you fear most. Not that you will act on the thought, but that you will never be free of it. If you have ever felt stuck despite trying affirmations, positive thinking, or goal-setting tools, it is possible that this is part of why. You cannot affirm your way out of a thought you are not allowed to see clearly. The suppression is still running underneath. And most surface-level self-help has no language for what happens in that underground layer. If this is something you are actively struggling with, I made a longer breakdown that walks through what it looks like to work with this layer instead of fighting it. I will leave that linked below. So what actually helps? Not suppression, not the endless search for reassurance, not trying to logic your way into certainty about what the thought means. What helps is something that sounds almost too simple, which is why it is so consistently underestimated. It is making room. In acceptance-based approaches to psychological suffering, the goal is not to get rid of difficult thoughts. It is to change your relationship with them. To shift from treating every difficult thought as a fire that must be put out immediately to being able to notice the thought, acknowledge it, and let it exist without treating its existence as an emergency. This is not the same as enjoying the thought. It is not the same as agreeing with it. It is not the same as acting on it. It is simply the practice of observing your own mind without collapsing into judgment about what you find there. Think of it like this. Imagine you are standing in a river. For a long time, every time a piece of debris floated by, you grabbed it, you examined it. You tried to understand where it came from and what it meant, you worked to remove it from the water, and while you were doing all of that, the current kept moving and more debris kept coming. Now, imagine just standing in the river, watching what floats by, noticing it, not ignoring it, but not grabbing it either. The debris does not stop coming, but your life is no longer organized around managing it. Your nervous system needs to learn through repeated experience that the thought is not a threat that requires action, that exposure happens through presence, not avoidance. This is not a quick process, and it is not about forcing yourself to be comfortable. It is about slowly building evidence inside your own experience that you can have the thought and nothing catastrophic happens, that having the thought does not make you the thought, that noticing something dark inside yourself does not mean you are dark. It means you are human. Most people do not realize that the healthiest minds are not the ones that produce the fewest difficult thoughts. They are the ones with the most flexible relationship with those thoughts. The ones that can let something difficult pass through without organizing an entire response around it. That flexibility is what we are building toward. Not a mind without dark corners, but a mind that is not afraid of its own shadows. I want to leave you with something that I hope you carry with you past this video. The thought you are most ashamed of is not a window into what you are. It is more likely a window into what you care about, what you are afraid of, or simply what it is like to have a complex, unpredictable, fully alive human mind. None of those things are evidence against you. You are not the worst thought you have ever had. You are the one who noticed it. You are the one who stayed. You are the one who is trying right now to understand rather than condemn. That matters. That is actually the beginning of something. If this kind of exploration is something you want more of, consider subscribing. This channel exists to offer clarity, consistency, and a steadier relationship with your own inner life. Not because I have everything figured out, but because I think we understand ourselves better when we think things through together. And if you are sitting with something specific, something that feels stuck even after years of working on it, the video I mentioned earlier might be worth your time. It goes deeper into what is happening when surface level tools stop working, and what it looks like to approach that layer differently. I will leave it linked below. Take your time with this. There is no rush.